The story begins within the Runendell family, a powerful clan of swordsmen that rules half the world. Every member of this family is born with extraordinary strength and unmatched talent, guided by three core values: combat, conquest, and control. These principles form the foundation of their dominance, and strength alone decides one's worth. Jin Runendell, the youngest son of the family, took part in the grand selection ceremony where each child's future path was determined. He chose the patriarch's sword, Barasada, a symbol of leadership. Everyone believed this choice marked him as the one destined to become the next patriarch. Even his father found it fascinating, confident that Jin's life would be filled with success and recognition. But reality was harsh. Jin lacked the natural swordsmanship talent that defined the Runendell family. Despite his lineage, he could not match the skill or strength of his siblings. Soon, he was branded a disgrace, ridiculed by others, and mocked for his efforts. His brothers found amusement in his struggles, treating his training as a joke. They saw him as unworthy of the Barasada and the Runendell name. Their scorn often turned physical, knocking him down whenever he tried to defend himself. They considered his persistence meaningless and claimed his efforts would never change anything. No matter how many times he was humiliated or hurt, Jin never retaliated. Instead, he silently endured, holding onto a faint hope that if he worked hard enough, he might someday earn the trust and acknowledgement of his family. Eventually, that hope was crushed. Jin was abandoned and cast out, left to live as a vagrant. Yet fate had other plans. Wandering aimlessly, he crossed paths with a teacher who saw something hidden within him, a different kind of strength. Jin discovered that he could wield magic, a forbidden art in his clan. This power, unseen by others, became his new path. 3 years passed. Jin trained relentlessly, balancing both swordsmanship and magic. One day, his life changed again when he was suddenly pulled into darkness. There, he encountered Saderet, the god of shadows. The deity offered him a contract that granted him control over shadow powers and immunity to curses. During this encounter, Saderet noticed something unusual about Jin. A curse had bound him since birth, one known as Blade's Delusion. This curse suppressed his potential as a swordsman, explaining why he had failed all his life. Saderet lifted the curse and promised that Jin would now become a true swordsman. When Jin returned, he immediately tested his sword. His movements were smoother, faster, and sharper than ever before. For the first time, he felt the harmony between his blade and his magic. Everything he had struggled for finally made sense, and the strength he had dreamed of was now his reality. But destiny was not kind. Despite his newfound power, Jin was later ambushed and defeated in battle. Crushed beneath debris, he faced death again, wondering why he had been given a second chance only to lose everything once more. As his vision faded, the world around him dissolved into darkness. Then he opened his eyes and found himself standing in the sword sanctuary of his clan, his childhood surroundings. Everything was as it had been more than 20 years ago. He realized that he had returned to the past, to the moment when he first chose the Barasada. This time, however, things were different. The boy who once held that sword with uncertainty now grasped it with conviction. His family celebrated his choice, unaware that the weak child they mocked had been reborn with purpose. 6 years later, still too small to reach the top shelf, Jin had already vowed to rewrite his fate from the very beginning. Jin has been living in the Storm Castle for quite some time now, enduring its isolation while counting down the 3 remaining years before he's finally free. The place feels like a cage to him, where every day passes under strict eyes and silent walls. One morning, a maid enters his room and freezes in horror. There's a dead bird lying motionless on the floor. Jin quickly understands the situation. Only 2 people in the castle would pull such a cruel stunt: his mischievous brothers, Diatona and Tona, both 9 years old. The 2 stand outside, laughing as if they've just accomplished something amusing. Jin looks at them with quiet sadness, remembering how in his previous life these same 2 grew up to become murderers. Even as children, their hearts were already dark, mocking him by killing a helpless creature just to get his reaction. They start taunting him for not using the Barasada, the family's prestigious sword. Jin remains calm, but when Tona suddenly lunges forward to attack, he reacts instantly. He blocks the punch with ease, catching his brother completely off guard, and retaliates with a swift counter. Though Jin holds back his real strength, the blows he delivers are powerful enough to send a clear message. The once passive younger brother now shows no hesitation, leaving both of them bruised and stunned. After the scuffle, he warns them not to cross his path again. Moments later, Khan, one of the Guardian Knights, arrives and is shocked to see the state of the two young masters. Jin calmly explains that they simply fought each other, hiding the truth. Khan, although doubtful, suggests taking them to a doctor, but Jin refuses and instead orders that they be left exposed to the heavy storm outside, a harsh punishment meant to teach them the weight of their actions. Khan obeys but senses something dark emanating from Jin, a strange, almost sinister aura. It makes him suspect that the young master might have used mana. Realizing the truth behind the brothers' defeat, Khan decides to report everything to the Patriarch. Back in the Storm Castle, Jin notices Khan leaving to make his report and understands what's happening. He knows the knight must have sensed the use of Shadow Force, the power granted to him through his contract with the God of Darkness. This confirms that even after returning to the past, his shadow powers remain active, keeping him free from the curse that once crippled his swordsmanship. With that realization, he feels relief. In this life, he will not be remembered as the weakest swordsman. However, he soon faces a new challenge, a confrontation with his father, the Patriarch. After hearing Khan's report, the Patriarch orders the flag bearers to assemble, summoning 200 knights of the Runendell family. His return to the Storm Castle is nothing short of legendary. Mary, one of the flag bearers, is surprised by the sudden command, while her comrade Dias speculates that it might involve Jin. They had been in the middle of an intense battle when the order came, leaving everyone confused about why the Patriarch would summon them over a child. Luna, another flag bearer, signals them to stay silent, but curiosity lingers. None of them understand the real reason behind the Patriarch's interest in Jin. At the castle, a maid informs Jin about his father's arrival. He quietly wonders what exactly Khan reported. He suspects his father must have sensed something different about the energy he used, something beyond both mana and aura. He knows this meeting will determine whether his mysterious power will be seen as a blessing or a threat to the clan. The Patriarch, Kirin Runendell, arrives with his knights, his presence alone commanding silence. His sword gleams with authority as he immediately orders that Diatona and Tona be brought before him. When questioned about their behavior, the two try to twist the story, claiming that Jin attacked them with a strange, magic-like power. Their attempt to manipulate the situation fails. Kirin's expression remains cold and unmoved. He dismisses their excuses, warning that such weakness and deceit have no place in the family. After addressing them, he demands Jin's presence. Standing before his father, Jin faces the man who represents absolute strength, Kirin Runendell, the Patriarch, a divine star knight whose power reaches near godhood. His immense strength has stripped him of most human emotions, leaving only ambition for the family's greatness. In his previous life, Jin had never earned his father's approval and was treated as insignificant. But this time, standing before him again, things are no longer the same. In this life, Jin walks with confidence, no longer the timid boy who once bowed his head in shame. When he enters the hall, the flag bearers turn their attention toward him, surprised by the composure in his stride. He kneels before his father, the mighty Patriarch, Kirin Runendell. The Patriarch questions why his son addresses him formally as Patriarch instead of father. Jin respectfully explains that it feels proper to use a title that reflects both authority and reverence. Impressed by his tone, Kirin proceeds to test him with the same question he had asked his brothers. Frustrated, yet composed, Jin responds that their mistake lies in revenge itself. He quotes the family's creed, that vengeance must always be carried out, regardless of who stands in the way. His answer silences the hall. With a wave of his hand, Kirin orders the knights and flag bearers to leave. The soldiers exchange stunned glances, realizing that Jin has passed his father's test. Mary, one of the flag bearers and Jin's elder sister, looks on with pride, finding it remarkable that her younger brother has earned a private audience with her father. Once the room empties, Kieran's attention sharpens. He brings up the topic of magic, reminding Jin that sorcery hinders true mastery of the sword. His voice turns stern as he demands to know the source of his son's power, warning that punishment awaits if the answer involves mana. Jin thinks quickly. He knows that revealing the god of darkness as the source would lead to disaster. Instead, he claims not to fully understand his power and decides to demonstrate it instead. As the energy fills the room, Kieran's eyes widen in recognition. The power Jin wields is Shadow Force, the same energy once used by the founding patriarch of their clan. Astonished, he realizes that his son can command both the sacred sword Barasada and the forbidden shadows. Curious, Kieran begins to speak of history long forgotten. He reveals that Sadaret, the god of shadows, once forged a pact with Tamar, the clan's first patriarch, granting the Runindels immense growth. After Tamar's death, Sadaret vanished, never again offering his strength to anyone, until now. Intrigued by this revelation, Jin asks if the god of shadows is stronger than even his father. Kieran pauses, then admits he does not know, as he has never faced a god in battle. Yet his tone carries a quiet confidence, one that only the strongest man in the world could hold. The patriarch even allows himself a faint smile, appreciating his son's curiosity and resolve. He then asks how Jin intends to use his newfound power. At first, Jin answers that he will use it for the prosperity of the clan. Kieran laughs at the dishonesty, having already seen through his son's nature. He knows the boy is cunning and ruthless, the same child who beat his brothers and left them to face a storm as punishment. Recognizing the futility of pretending, Jin admits that he intends to use the Shadow Force for himself. Instead of being angered, Kieran praises this honesty. He acknowledges the boy's ambition and decides to watch his growth closely. The meeting ends with a sense of mutual understanding. Jin leaves exhausted but satisfied, relieved that he no longer needs to hide his abilities. That night, memories of his past life resurface, of how invisible he once felt. This time, though, everything is different. His efforts are being noticed, and his strength no longer mocked. Later, Mary visits him, carrying a box as a gift. Inside lies the burning heart of a phoenix, a bizarre yet powerful offering. Mary, known as the Madwoman of the South and a six-star knight, tells him it's a challenge, a gift to help him grow stronger and someday face her in battle. The heart of a phoenix grants immunity to fire and accelerates one's growth, an incredible boon for a 7-year-old. Jin wonders if he will one day be strong enough to summon a phoenix of his own. As he contemplates this, the maid Jill brings him soup. Before he can eat, his mischievous brothers appear, drooling at the aroma but too proud to ask for a share. Jin makes them a deal. They can have some soup if they complete a task for him. Desperate, the two agree and begin digging in the courtyard. Unaware of what they're uncovering, they eventually find a sealed chamber buried beneath the earth. By the time they return, dirty and exhausted, Jin has already eaten most of the soup, leaving only a tiny spoonful behind as their reward. Meanwhile, Jin visits the spot they unearthed. Using his mana, he breaks through the remaining barrier, revealing an ancient hidden chamber, the secret library of the Runindel clan. This place had been forbidden to him in his past life, reserved only for the flag bearers. Inside, countless relics and records from fallen enemies are preserved. Remembering a passcode he once learned from Dais in his previous life, Jin chants the words to enter. The door opens, and he steps into the dark, silent hall. There, he discovers a mysterious figure preserved in a capsule, a being with scales and an aura that feels both ancient and powerful. The realization strikes him. This is Muraken, the dark dragon defeated by the first patriarch long ago. Standing before the legendary creature, Jin begins to explore the archives, searching for knowledge about the Kungan clan. The ancient language proves difficult to read, but instead of risking exposure by taking the books, he decides to copy their contents by hand. Day after day, Jin returns, quietly studying and transcribing the texts at home, determined to uncover every secret that the Runindel family once hid from him. One quiet day in the Storm Castle, Jin's routine was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Someone had entered the library at a strange hour, and it turned out to be no ordinary person. The one who appeared was Muraken, the dark dragon who had long been in slumber. His sudden awakening startled Jin, though he tried his best to stay composed, knowing this creature was once an ally of the clan. Trying to be respectful, Jin referred to him as Dragon, but that only angered Muraken. The ancient being lashed out in frustration, insulted by how far he had fallen, from a being of immense power to a mere guardian for the Runkendels. Muraken grumbled bitterly about his current state, but his awakening wasn't without reason. He had sensed something strange from the boy, a faint trace of shadow force. When Muraken examined Jin more closely, he was stunned. That dark energy could only belong to the contractor of Sadaret, the god of darkness. There was no doubt about it. Jin was the new contractor. Curious, Jin revealed his shadow powers to confirm it. The dragon was completely taken aback, mumbling in disbelief before collapsing in dismay. The mighty Muraken couldn't believe that the new contractor of the god of darkness was just a small boy. Realizing there was no escaping fate, Muraken admitted that he had once made an oath with Sadaret, binding him to serve the god's next contractor, which now turned out to be Jin. He didn't go into details, deciding to explain everything later. Instead, he properly introduced himself in his true form, revealing his massive, shadowy dragon body, the last descendant of the shadows and the sworn servant of Sadaret. Jin respectfully introduced himself as the youngest member of the Runcandle clan. The mountain where the Storm Castle stood was actually named after Muraken himself, the same dragon who had once ruled the skies for millennia before losing a fateful battle to the first patriarch of the clan. That fight wasn't born of hatred. It was a destined clash between two beings bound by divine contracts. People had long wondered what happened to the dark dragon after that battle. Few knew he had been sleeping beneath the castle all this time. Now awake, Muraken had once again found his purpose, to serve Jin as his guardian. In his human form, he spent time talking with the boy, answering his endless questions and teaching him about the old world. Jin continued visiting the library for months after Muraken's awakening. He was especially curious about the battle between Muraken and the first patriarch, Timar. But Muraken could barely remember the details, brushing it off with a laugh and preferring to focus on his new favorite discovery, strawberry pies. Despite his forgetfulness, he admired Jin's persistence in studying the ancient books, something no other child would have the patience for. When Jin humbly called himself average compared to his powerful siblings and parents, Muraken disagreed. He told the boy that even Timar, the legendary founder himself, couldn't have grasped the knowledge Jin now studied at such a young age. Timar's strength had come not from reading, but from raw instinct and willpower. Muraken assured Jin that he possessed the same extraordinary talent, and that, with time and training, he could rise to stand beside or even surpass the legendary flames of Timar. Muraken, wanting to keep Jin motivated, begins telling him more about Sadaret. He reveals that the god of shadows is also known as Sadaret the Infinite, a being whose power knows no limits. This means that Jin's potential as the god's contractor could reach unimaginable heights. To nurture that potential, Muraken decides to teach the boy a vital technique, the Shadow Force Release. This ability is fundamental for mastering the Shadow Force, but it carries great risk if handled carelessly. Muraken warns him to train diligently before attempting it again. He then instructs Jin to release his mana, but the boy seems puzzled. Muraken clarifies that Shadow Force Release depends on two basic skills, mana release and mana transfer. Normally, mastering these would take at least 3 years of training, but Jin's impatience to grow stronger pushes him to attempt it immediately. Muraken, strict about the basics, initially refuses to proceed until Jin shows proper control. However, Jin stuns him by executing a flawless mana release on his first try, followed by a clean mana transfer. Muraken, speechless, realizes that this tiny brat might actually be a genius. With both prerequisites perfectly met, he demonstrates the Shadow Force Release himself. The library darkens as shadows flood the room, responding to Muraken's power. He explains that all shadows originate from Sadaret's energy, And because Jin is Soderet's sole contractor, he too can become a master of the shadows. The sight leaves Jin amazed as he witnesses the full might of his powers for the first time. Meanwhile, far from the castle, Luna, one of the Run Candle flag bearers, nears the end of her mission. Surrounded by the remains of defeated monsters, she estimates it will take another 4 months to finish. She briefly wonders what kind of gift her younger brother would like when she returns. 6 months pass since Muraken's awakening. Jin's older brothers, Tona and Daytona, leave the castle after reaching adulthood. On his 9th birthday, the young master receives a celebration cake from Jill, who insists everyone should enjoy it together. As they prepare, Khan, known for his constant gossiping, suddenly appears to announce that Lady Luna, the eldest sibling and first flag bearer, has come for a personal visit. Luna Run Candle, the strongest heir and the most gifted knight of the clan, has always been different. Despite her strength, she has no interest in competing for the patriarch's seat and often distances herself from her siblings. In Jin's previous life, she had treated him like a stranger, so her sudden visit now feels completely unexpected. Jin begins to worry, wondering if she somehow discovered his secret trips to the library. However, Luna greets him with warmth and surprising gentleness. She pats his head, asks about his well-being, and speaks with genuine concern. Jin can't help but feel guarded. This kindness doesn't match the Luna he once knew. She notices his hesitation and realizes that her little brother might think she sees him as a rival. Hurt by the thought, Luna apologizes and kneels before him, asking to talk privately. When they are alone, Luna explains that she hurried back because their siblings have started watching Jin closely ever since his sudden rise in status. She fears they might act against him once he leaves the safety of the Storm Castle. She confesses that she despises the clan's cruel traditions, where even family ties are secondary to ambition. Hearing this, Jin finally understands why Luna abandoned her pursuit of the patriarch's position, something she never revealed in his past life. He admits that he won't back down, no matter the threat. Luna insists that her advice isn't meant to discourage him, only to protect him. When Jin mentions that he's already faced one assassination attempt, Luna's calm demeanor vanishes. Her aura flares with fury at the thought that someone dared to harm her brother within their own home. She demands to know the attacker's name, but Jin assures her he's fine and that he doesn't know who it was. Relieved yet still angry, Luna embraces her brother tightly, apologizing for the family's endless conflicts. Jin, feeling the warmth of genuine care for the first time, is quietly moved by her compassion. Not wanting to spoil his birthday mood, Luna presents him with a gift, a beautiful blue pendant, a rare moment of affection between siblings in a family built on rivalry. Luna instructs Jin to turn around and shows him the blue pendant she gave him. The necklace holds a powerful ability. Once shattered, it can summon Luna to his aid in dangerous situations. She gives it to him not only as a birthday gift, but as a safeguard, wanting him to be protected whenever trouble arises. They share a warm, heartfelt celebration before she must return to her duties, bidding him farewell. Later, Jin visits the library wearing the pendant, which surprises Muraken. The dragon recognizes it as a legendary treasure that once belonged to the demon Beast King, a relic many had risked their lives to claim. The pendant not only enhances its wearer's abilities, but also grants immunity against weak spells. Jin explains its origins and realizes that Luna likely sensed Muraken's presence all along, but kept it a secret out of care for him. Muraken confirms this, understanding the trust and support Luna places in her little brother. Over the past years, Jin's early life, which he once expected to be slow and uneventful, had been full of growth and opportunity. He received rare gifts, honed his skills, and formed important relationships, things his previous self could only dream of. On his 10th birthday, he sparred with Khan, the Guardian Knight, demonstrating extraordinary strength for his age. Khan, impressed, recognized why the Patriarch had maintained a close interest in Jin and paid him respect as his final mentor before the boy left the Storm Castle. Jin had also begun to feel the effects of Mary's gift, the Phoenix Heart, which gradually made him immune to flames. With his powers steadily taking effect, he prepared to leave the castle the following day. Jill packed his books for the journey, and he requested his usual strawberry pie as a snack. Arriving at the secret library to meet Murakin one last time, Jin wondered how they would maintain contact. Murakin, though currently weakened, reassured him that as Jin grew stronger, the dragon would recover in parallel. He planned to maintain a powerful hallucination of himself to deceive any onlookers until Jin reached adulthood. The dragon also enjoyed the treat Jin brought, delighted by the prospect of strawberry pie and the chance to celebrate. As Jin prepared to leave for the family estate, Jill reminded him that life would become far busier and she might not always be able to serve him personally. Guardian Knights Jerome and Holtz arrived to escort him on the journey. It was the end of the 18th century as Jin departed the Storm Castle, heading toward the Garden of Swords. Heavy snowfall slowed their progress, preventing portal use. Suddenly, the carriage halted abruptly, and Jerome and Holtz warned Jin to stay inside as an unexpected obstacle appeared ahead. The carriage ride quickly turns into chaos as it comes under attack. Jill, confident in the strength of the 7-star knights assigned to protect them, initially believes they can handle the threat. But Jin quickly notices something amiss. The attackers outnumber the knights 20-1, and it becomes clear that the guardians themselves have betrayed them. Realizing the danger, he orders an immediate escape. Jill unleashes her full power, shielding Jin as the carriage explodes, and they narrowly evade destruction. Jill wishes to take responsibility for the incident, but Jin insists there are more pressing matters. The attackers may not be what they seem. Some could even be allies posing as enemies. Observing the situation, Jin is surprised that they allowed him to escape, raising suspicions about their true intentions. It turns out that powerful factions, including the Yuta clan, the sorcerers of the Mel Kingdom, and the Black Mercenary Group, are all present to ensure his safety. Vice Captain Murka arrives to personally oversee Jin's protection, while the two imposter knights, posing as Jerome and Holtz, struggle against the superior forces. Jin, cold and calculating, commands action. Jill moves with astonishing speed, cutting down one imposter and crippling the other by severing both arms. Despite being a maid, Jill proves herself a formidable 7-star martial artist, far exceeding the expectations of anyone who underestimated her. The limbless imposter, shocked, warns that the age of the Runendells will end. Surprisingly, Jin agrees. He acknowledges that his ambitions serve his own growth rather than the clan's. The imposter reveals his affiliation with the Zayla Sorcerer clan, a rival faction that has opposed the Runkendells for over a millennium. Following the death of Timar, they had imposed strict prohibitions on magic within the Runkendell family. The attacker is merely a pawn in a much larger scheme. Jin lets Jill handle the prisoner and reflects on the attack, concluding that it was likely the work of a Zeal extremist, not the clan itself. He thanks Vice Captain Murka for saving them, showing an unusual level of maturity and strategic thinking for a 10-year-old. Murka, astonished, recognizes the boy's ambition and instructs his men to treat Jin with the respect he deserves. With the immediate threat neutralized, they continue their journey on foot, heading toward the nearest village, a 2-hour trek. Jin ensures Jill is not blamed, knowing even a highly skilled knight like Khan was deceived. The young master's reflections drift to the past. Jill had always been his devoted caretaker, even in his first life, remaining loyal and protective despite his perceived lack of talent. She had suffered unjustly because of him, yet never once blamed him and had even apologized for any perceived failures. In that moment, Jin realizes that Jill is the only truly devoted person he has ever known. Jin makes sure Jill understands her importance, emphasizing that she is the only person he trusts for his protection. Jill reflects on his words, realizing he only scolded her to prevent unnecessary guilt, and she resolves to perform at her best. Upon arriving at the village inn, Jin senses that the transfigurator Buber Gaston might be involved. Known for his extreme dragon-based transformations, Buber caused massive chaos in the world before his capture in Jin's previous life. The boy contemplates whether to recruit him this time, though his schemes had nearly led to Jin's assassination before. Exhausted from training, Jin falls asleep while Jill tucks him in. When he wakes, he notices an annoying cat at his window, which he quickly realizes is Murakin in disguise. The dragon, frustrated at being followed, hisses and storms inside, accidentally tripping over the desk. Jill bursts in, ready to attack, but halts when she recognizes the intruder, the very dragon she had been baking pies for. Jin introduces Muraken as the guardian dragon of the clan, explaining their secret bond and the source of his powers, emphasizing that it must remain hidden. Jill, impressed and supportive, cautiously considers relying on Muraken despite his clumsiness. They proceed to the Mel portal, where Muraken's duty is complete. Jill refuses to elaborate on why she left her clan to join the Run Candles, while the portal staff grants them first-class teleportation seats in recognition of their high status. Jin notices a noble mage of the Zeoful clan seated nearby. Muraken quickly dispatches the impudent noble, leaving him shocked at Jin's composure. Another noble, Veridine, approaches, offering friendship, but Jin recalls that his men had nearly attacked Veridine's group previously. Jin responds with playful provocation, though he clarifies his intent, impressing and unnerving Veridine simultaneously. The young boy asserts that their fathers, both powerful figures, would never escalate a children's quarrel into war. Veridine admires Jin's boldness, but recognizes the potential complications of befriending him, opting instead to treat him as a lifelong rival. Jin, intrigued by the chaotic nature of the Zeoful clan, prepares for the teleportation. As the portal activates, he reflects on the challenges and alliances ahead, ready to face the next stage of his journey. Before teleportation ends, Veridine expresses excitement at the thought of meeting Jin again, but the boy remains stoic, unwilling to give him that chance. Once arrived, Petrov, the second assistant butler, welcomes him to the Garden of Swords, the sanctum of blades reserved for the most prestigious Runendell family members. Weapons marked here represent the pinnacle of honor. In his previous life, Jin had aimed for the same recognition, but failed due to naivety and weakness. Now, with cunning and skill, he anticipates navigating the household more effectively. Jin meets his mother, Rosa Runendell, while Sarone notices the cat he brought, instantly sensing the boy's pride in claiming it. Jin names the cat Kitty Runendell, much to the disdain of his brothers, but he explains he wants to take responsibility for it. By giving the cat his family name, he commits to defending it, and anyone who harms it will face his wrath. The patriarch appreciates his decisiveness, hoping the older siblings stay vigilant and do not underestimate him. 4 years later, Jin is now 14 and a 2-star knight. After finishing a training session with Garen, he prepares to train with Luna. Preferring solitude, he eats lunch with his cats instead of his family. Velop, a meek cadet soon to be expelled, serves him. Though Velop is weak and has low grades, Jin encourages him to take pride in his abilities, reminding him that being a Runendell cadet is an achievement in itself. Jin reflects on the tragic future of a peer, Philip, and vows to help him survive and thrive this time. Training with Luna intensifies. She instructs him to use his mind's eye, a high-level meditation skill usually reserved for 7-star knights, while restricting aura use. Though initially confused, Jin trusts her guidance and heightens his focus. Luna notes his extraordinary concentration, predicting he will unlock even greater power soon. The story then shifts to a critical sparring session. Jin faces the top 10 cadets, needing victory to enter the intermediate class. His friend Velop, nervous, watches as Jin defeats 8 fighters in succession. His biggest concern is Mesa Milcano, the top-ranked cadet, whose skill has noticeably improved. Jin chooses to use simple, precise moves, forcing Mesa to realize he is being underestimated. Angered by this, she launches a more powerful assault, determined to defeat the young master. Mesa lunges with everything she has, aiming for a decisive strike, but Jin anticipates her move and shatters her blade mid-attack, securing victory. Mesa is stunned. He had struck the same spot multiple times, yet Jin's precision was unmatched. Their strength and stamina were comparable, but it was Jin's accuracy that made the difference. Mesa vows to train harder to impress him in their next encounter. Having overcome all 10 cadets, Jin instills a sense of hopelessness in the remaining fighters. He defeats the final cadet quickly, completing the challenge and earning a spot in the intermediate class for the following year, where he will receive proper training from a true Runindel. Yet even after this, Jin calls out Velop for a final spar. Nervous and introverted, Velop hesitates, but Jin insists, warning that pretending now will cost him in the future. Velop fidgets onto the battlefield, unsure of his abilities, while Jin plans to push him to his limits. The fight begins, and though Velop blocks Jin's powerful attack, he struggles under the onslaught. Jin gives him no mercy, testing his resilience and skill. Slowly, Velop's true potential awakens. A golden aura envelopes him, amplifying his attacks. Mesa warns Garen that Jin's life could be in danger, but the boy insists the duel remains secret so Velop can unlock his full power. Velop strikes with everything he has, shattering Jin's blade. Despite this, Jin counterattacks, capturing Velop in a headlock. Then, unexpectedly, he releases him, a gesture of mercy. Jin explains his intent. He wants Velop to grow strong, not to dominate him. In their clan, kindness alone isn't enough to survive. Jin encourages Velop to protect his beliefs and get along with others through strength. Later, Jin fetches lunch for both of them, showing care beyond just martial skill. Khan reports this act of consideration to Seer, who is proud of his son and ready to assign Jin his first mission. At the start of 1795, Jin turns 15 and is promoted to a 3-star knight. He gets a brief break from training as the intermediate class prepares to use real swords, handcrafted for each cadet. Luna eagerly joins him to help select his weapon. She initially presents a massive sword she once wielded at Jin's age, but he hesitates, feeling it unsuitable. Undeterred, Luna chooses a new weapon, the Brahmani, a legendary blade of the first patriarch and a perfect match for Shadow Force users. Jin is thrilled. This weapon is one he would have coveted in the future, yet Luna gives it freely. She tells him no repayment is necessary, understanding his guarded nature toward her. Luna reminds him that, despite sibling rivalry, her love and support are unwavering. Having experienced loneliness herself, she hopes Jin will never endure the same isolation. Returning to training, Jin wields the Brahmandi excitedly, showing it to Muraken. The dragon, unimpressed with Jin's current skill, warns him that mastery of the Shadow Force is required to unlock the weapon's potential. Muraken insists Jin should aim for 5-star proficiency before attempting full activation. Defiant, Jin refuses to wait, hoping to reach his goal by the next year, which only aggravates Muraken further. To push the dragon's patience, Jin picks up his book and threatens to tear it apart, cementing his bold, headstrong nature. Jin barrels forward. Fortunately, Jill arrives with news that Garen wants to see Jin for a mission briefing. Surprised, Jin listens as she explains that his first mission will begin immediately after the break. Though proud to finally receive a real task, he's a little confused by the timing. Why right after the break? Jill warns him that missions are brutal, even for intermediate cadets, and advises him to prepare mentally. Intrigued, Jin decides to question Garen directly about the assignment. When he enters the room, Garen informs him that he'll be leading a mission with 10 novice-class cadets. They'll be split into groups of 2 and sent to scout the border area of the John Kingdom, a location far too dangerous for beginners. The task feels suspicious to Jin. Such a mission should never involve novices. He wonders if his father is behind these harsh conditions and whether Velop might somehow be connected. Still, Jin accepts the challenge without hesitation, determined to prove that his resolve and skill can withstand any test. 4 days later, the team sets out on their mission to rescue Simber Bill of the Bill family. They set up camp near the border and begin their operations, exchanging reports daily through rotating groups. As team leader, Jin enforces discipline but ensures everyone rests when needed to keep their strength up. He's impressed when Velop, acting as their communications mediator, reports there are no werewolves nearby. It's a good sign, but something still feels off. Even though everything appears to be going smoothly, Jin can't shake his unease. His instincts tell him there's more to this mission than meets the eye. The area beyond their current zone, Area 13, is known as the Land of Half-Men, a deadly territory where cadets like them shouldn't be operating. Jin's cautious side urges him to aim for a clean, efficient victory without wasting energy. But his unease proves justified when Velop rushes in with alarming news. Group 2 has been attacked by human assailants. 3 attackers are confirmed, but there could be more. Wasting no time, Jin orders the others to return to base while he and Velop move to confront the enemy. Determined to avenge his fallen comrades, Jin charges ahead despite the unknown dangers. Along the way, Velop trembles at the sight of blood scattered across the path, fearing Mesa's group has been wiped out. But Jin remains calm. There are no remains or torn bodies, which means there's still hope. Finding a blood-soaked bandage, he deduces that Group 2 changed routes after sensing another threat nearby. He quickly assigns tasks. Sierra is to go with Eddington and David to regroup, while Jin and Velop pursue Group 2 directly. They soon find the missing cadets locked in battle with their attackers, though Mesa herself is nowhere to be seen. Without hesitation, Jin orders Velop to strike the enemy on the left. Channeling Shadow Force through his weapon, Jin's blade gleams with dark power as he lunges forward, instantly killing one of the assailants. Velop attacks the second, but Jin finishes him from behind with a clean slash, ending the fight in seconds. Interrogating the last surviving attacker, Jin demands to know Mesa's whereabouts. His expression turns cold as he gives the man 2 options, both leading to his death. Terrified, the assailant confesses that they belong to the Kinsalo faction, a terrorist group that once disguised themselves as revolutionaries to assassinate the king of the John Kingdom. Their true goal, however, is world domination. When Jin presses for details, the man admits he doesn't know much. He's just a pawn, but there's a nearby base housing 20 martial artists and sorcerers. As for Mesa, the attackers were ordered to kidnap female cadets for political leverage. After extracting all the information he can, Jin ends the man's life without hesitation, unwilling to show mercy to those who threaten his clan. An hour passes since Mesa's abduction. Jin tells his team to recover and request reinforcements, but he has already made up his mind. He'll infiltrate the enemy base alone. His comrades try to stop him, insisting it's suicide to face 20 opponents, but Jin silences them. He's the leader, and it's his duty to protect his people. He orders Velop to take command in his absence, then disappears into the shadows. With resolve burning in his chest, Jin races toward the enemy stronghold, determined to save Mesa before it's too late. He knows he can't defeat 20 trained enemies head-on, so his strategy is clear: rescue, not destruction. Activating his detection magic and combining it with wind sense, he enhances his perception to trace their movements. The moment he closes in on the enemy's location, Jin's instincts scream a warning. From the surrounding darkness, multiple figures burst out of hiding. The ambush has begun. With Shadow Force amplifying his speed and strength, he slices through the first wave of enemies, creating a narrow path forward. The assailants, realizing they're facing a formidable opponent, regroup and attack in coordinated pairs. Jin adapts instantly, predicting their movements and countering with preemptive strikes. Even though the odds are stacked against him, his mastery of precision and Shadow Force allows him to control the battlefield. Amid the chaos, Jin spots traces of Mesa's movement. Her footprints are faint, but visible thanks to the detection magic. He diverts his path slightly, evading a powerful strike from a particularly large assailant. Turning around, the young man muttered that it meant that they would not dare touch the share of the one who was more important, and for now, there was a chance to save Mesa. Taking the map, the young gentleman whispered that he was already near the lands of the Beastmen, and the Canelo base was somewhere nearby. Having released the fire, the master decided that he needed to distract them, wait for the right moment, and save Mississippi. A second later, Jean threw a fiery stream forward. Suddenly, it seemed like the entire forest quickly caught fire. Raising his head, the protagonist realized that first they would have to deal with the fire. Small houses were visible, and it was heard that they were burning, and they also did not understand how this happened. The men, clenching their fists, asked where the fire was coming from, after which they shouted that they needed to put it out and bring water. The protagonist turned his gaze to the side, hearing that they were worthless idiots. The big guy opened his mouth wide and clarified whether they did not know how to put out a fire and ordered the mages to use water or ice magic, and the guy wondered if he was the one in charge here. A moment later, the young man ran behind the house, and an appeal to the boss was heard that they were not succeeding. The man, frowning furiously, asked if they thought a fire could even start in such weather and explained that it was definitely started by someone. The big man looked back in confusion. An unusual glow was visible in the distance, and the villagers were shouting that they needed to quickly bring the mages. Taking the keys, the young gentleman muttered that this was great because now he could get inside. After some time, the door creaked open. Light illuminated the walls of the room, and the master said that it was cool in here and wondered where they were keeping this. Noticing a hatch, Jean wondered if this was a basement. Suddenly, long hair appeared. The girl sharply turned her head, hearing the master call her. The cadet exclaimed that it was dangerous here, to which the protagonist, raising the corners of his lips, replied that she did not need to worry about him, and clarified whether she could go. Suddenly, the protagonist cut the ropes on his hands, and she explained that she could walk, but she would hardly run. And the guy said that it was okay because he would help her. Suddenly, the guys raised their heads and asked what that sound was. The girl asked the commander for a promise, but he lowered his eyebrows and told her not to waste her strength talking. She quietly explained that if he was in danger, he should leave her behind, as she did not want him to be hurt because of her. Jean supported her and said they should leave since it was unsafe to stay. As they stepped out of the ruins, Jean noticed claw marks on the ground and assumed that beastmen had been there. The girl turned her head slightly, looking uncertain, when a shadow appeared nearby. A beast emerged from the darkness, gripping his weapon. It was from the White Wolf tribe. Mesa said she would draw the creature's attention, asking Jean to escape, but she was attacked from behind before she could act. The enemy spoke, calling them useless and unworthy. Jean listened silently and admitted to himself that it was his fault. Standing straight, he identified himself as the son of Shurin and asked the beast to give his name. The wolf replied that he recognized him as a descendant of the Rankendel family. A few days earlier, at the Rankendel estate, Jean's sword had been surrounded by shadow energy. Miran had struck him lightly and told him that awakening the sword too soon would poison him. He was warned not to attempt it until he was ready. Jean gave a short acknowledgement and continued his training. Back in the present, Jean steadied his weapon. The wolf introduced himself as a warrior from the Trua family of the White Wolf tribe. Keto mentioned that their tribe was known for battle and that a grown White Wolf was at least a 6th-rank warrior. The fight began. Jean recalled that the White Wolf tribe disliked the Rankendels because their ancestor had once summoned and killed their god, the Great White Wolf. The wolf said Jean would not escape with Mesa. Keto stated that Javier would offer himself if needed. Jean was given a choice to fight or run. He chose to fight. The wolf accepted and swung his hammer, scattering debris. Keto adjusted his stance, and Jean raised his sword. He blocked the next strike with a dagger, realizing that his strength was being tested. Both paused and stepped back. Jean thought about the pendant from his sister containing shadow energy. He considered using it but hesitated, unsure if it was the right time. A faint magical seal appeared before him, but he knew that even 4th-tier magic would not affect his opponent. Looking around the ruins, he realized that if traces of mana were discovered, his use of forbidden energy would be revealed, and he could be expelled from his family. The weapon struck the ground, and Jean understood that there was no turning back. He raised his sword, bracing himself against the force of the attack. Keto swung his hammer with fierce strength, and Jean focused his energy, calling on the shadows to awaken his blade. A moment later, the White Wolf broke through his defense, forcing him to leap backward. The beast remarked on Jean's dagger, calling it decent but questioning why it wasn't black like the Rankendel family's famed swords. A large hammer came crashing down toward Jean, showing that the wolf was far stronger than expected. As the beast approached, Jean wiped the sweat from his face, recalling the sensation he felt when first trying to awaken his sword. He heard the enemy declare that it was over. Suddenly, his blade began to glow faintly. The White Wolf shouted that both Jean and his weapon would be sacrificed to Javier, but Jean steadied his mind, realizing this was the moment he needed to remember everything. They both advanced quickly. Keto's eyes narrowed as chains of dark energy bound him, and he muttered that he couldn't see anything. A dark aura burst from Jean's sword, illuminating the space. Jean finally understood why the Rankindel swords were known for their black hue. The beast collapsed, defeated, and Jean acknowledged the outcome quietly. After the battle, Jean stood amid the thick bushes, exhausted and breathing heavily. His vision blurred, and he could faintly hear voices calling him weak and disgraceful. A figure approached, Moran, reminding him of the warning not to awaken the sword before it was ready, as the shadow energy would poison him. Moran told him to rise, that failure was not an option. Struggling, Jean pushed himself up. A magical shell formed around him, and he realized he had to control and release the shadow energy. The power surrounding him was unstable, but he tried to calm himself. When he placed his hand on his chest, the pain faded, though the sensation was strange. His body hadn't changed, but he could feel the energy of the shadows moving within him. Jean managed to stand and decided he needed to find Mesa and leave the ruins. As he searched, he noticed movement among the debris. A blond man appeared, trembling and pleading not to be harmed. Jean asked if he was from Canelo, but the man denied it, introducing himself as Simber from the Kingdom of Jean. Recognizing him, Jean replied that he had been sent to locate him. Simber, moved to tears, expressed joy at meeting a Rankindel, while Jean brushed it off, saying he was only fulfilling his duty. As they walked, Jean asked how Simber had been captured, believing he had only gone missing. Simber explained that he had gone to find the woman he loved. When Jean asked if they planned to escape together, Simber replied no, saying she had died 2 years ago. Jean was taken aback as Simber described how everything about her, her face, voice, and even the birthmarks on her hand, was exactly as before. He admitted it might sound irrational, but he was certain it was her. Jean lowered his gaze, suspecting that this could be the work of B.R. Bear, someone capable of creating perfect imitations. He noticed an unfamiliar emblem on the ground and considered that the kidnappers might have targeted Simber for money. Yet, the coincidence seemed too strong, and he wondered if B.R. Bear and Canelo were connected. The last time Jean had seen B.R. Bear was when he was 10 years old. He decided he needed to meet him again to uncover the truth. Looking toward the distance, Jean thought about how B.R. Bear's atelier was located in the capital of the Carano Principality. He resolved to visit when he advanced to the next group. Simber thanked him for listening, and Jean told him reinforcements would soon arrive, so they should return. Simber asked if Jean had called for the guard knights, and Jean quietly confirmed that he had, both for the mission and for him. Back at the estate, the aftermath was subdued. Jill offered a bath and care. Murakin scolded him about using the pendant recklessly and reminded him of the danger of shadow poisoning. Jin listened, acknowledged the risk, and accepted the need to recover. Word of the encounter spread quietly through the clan. A 5-star cadet had faced a white wolf warrior and survived by igniting the heart of his blade. The result raised questions rather than answers, and Jin set his focus on training, on hiding the sources of his power, and on following the next steps his family would require. The brothers looked disheartened, calling the situation terrible. Mu smiled faintly and asked what they were whispering about, wondering if they were scared of what would happen once the youngest joined their group. Though the brothers denied it, Anna caught on and told them not to lie to their older sister. Turning her gaze aside, she added that she despised lies so much that it made her want to rip out their tongues. Terrified, the brothers admitted their fear, and the 9th standard bearer asked if they wanted her help. When they asked how, she explained that they could make use of the new situation, not to miss their chance, and even take their slaves if needed. Soon after, the advanced group appeared, a place where strength ruled and both 3rd and 5th rank knights trained under the same roof. The atmosphere was fierce, and the warriors stood ready for competition. Jean noticed how the new recruits were mixed with veterans who had trained there for a decade. The senior female cadets began choosing younger ones to serve as their subordinates, practically slaves, and Jean quietly explained that this was their system. Those chosen would be shown their place. The girls encouraged the younger ones to prove themselves and put the new member in his place, which made the brothers grin. Anna warned them with a smirk that if they couldn't handle it, they'd better brace themselves. After the first task was completed, Jean was officially moved into the advanced group, his shadow energy now at the 4th rank. As he wiped his neck with a towel, he reflected that if he wanted to master it properly, he needed to reach the 6th rank in fencing within 5 years. He understood that knights of the 6th rank were skilled swordsmen, 7th rank knights were true masters, and only those who achieved the 8th rank and beyond were considered rare talents. Across the continent of 2 million people, barely 100 had reached the 9th or 10th rank. Thinking of his father, Jean remembered that only one man had gone even further, the Star Knight. Clenching his fist, he resolved that in this life, he would become a Star Knight too, perhaps even surpassing his father. Later, inside the mansion, a girl holding a pen allowed him to enter. When Jean asked if his mother had called him, Rose confirmed it. Sitting elegantly, the lady of the Rankendell house smiled slightly, saying she had heard about his success and was pleased with his results. Opening a book, she continued as Jean thanked her. Her expression grew serious as she mentioned his refusal to move into another room. Rose explained that the chamber he declined was one reserved only for the child destined to become the next ruler, a room that had been vacant since Joshua's youth. She told him it was time he took it. Jean, keeping calm, thanked her but declined again. His mother asked why, and he answered that despite how nice the room was, it was still just 4 walls, too grand and too luxurious for him. She pressed further, asking if he truly did not wish to live there, and Jean, with quiet resolve, said that he had already made up his mind. Rose tapped the table lightly and dismissed him. As he left, she rested her chin on her hand, wondering whether her youngest son lacked greed or had far too much of it. In her thoughts, she pictured Jean standing surrounded by blades, realizing that the room she offered was meant for the heir of the Rankendell family. She knew that accepting it would bring power and influence, but also jealousy and danger. Closing her eyes, Rose acknowledged that he likely understood this was her way of testing him. She decided to wait and see how he would perform in the intermediate class from here on. After some time, Jean stood with his hands on his hips and announced that starting tomorrow, they would be transferred to the intermediate training class, which was divided into several factions. The cadets listened carefully as he explained that their group would be entering a place filled with territorial disputes and constant aggression. Still, he assured them that they had nothing to fear since he would not stand by if something happened. He added that once he gained full control of the intermediate class, such problems would disappear entirely. Until then, he instructed everyone to move in groups of 3, even outside training sessions, and not to act alone. The group acknowledged his orders without hesitation. Under the daylight sky, Zed stood before a crowd of warriors, hands behind his back, and told them to pay attention. He announced that 10 new recruits had been accepted this year, while 27 had dropped out. The cadets listened nervously as he explained that the newcomers would gain experience under mentors in the intermediate class, emphasizing that he would only teach them swordsmanship and assess their abilities. The senior member of the Rankendell family added that every other problem, except for murder, had to be handled independently. Jean thought about this quietly, his lips pressed together. Zed then raised his voice, repeating that Rankendell did not need weaklings. A chant quickly echoed by the other cadets until the training grounds were filled with shouts. Jean sighed inwardly, realizing that the display was meant to intimidate them. Looking around, he noticed the twin brothers among the crowd and recognized a veteran warrior standing behind them, someone clearly beyond their ability to handle alone. He assumed they had gained the support of Mu and Anna, their sisters. Observing the situation, Jean understood that they were attempting to scare the new recruits, but he intended to make them see who they were really dealing with. Without hesitation, Jean stepped forward. The twins were startled and muttered that there was no reason to worry since their sisters would back them up. His sword gleamed under the light as he swung it in front of one of the warriors. The crowd froze in shock. A deep wound appeared on the man's arm, and within seconds, it was severed completely. The man screamed in agony while Jean calmly called for a doctor, remarking that he was not the one who should be afraid, it was them. Daytona, stunned, asked if he had lost his mind. Jean, sweating slightly, turned to the wounded cadet and asked for his name. After receiving an answer, he questioned whether the boy understood why he had cut off his hand. The cadet drew his sword, shouting for him to fight again. Jean turned toward the brothers and said he was speaking to Kajin, promising to accept the duel later and telling them to stay quiet. Kajin's instructor shouted angrily, demanding how Jin could behave like that after crippling his student. But Jin, unfazed, asked if that cadet belonged to his faction and explained that the boy's bloodthirsty glare had provoked his response. The surrounding warriors were speechless, unsure of how to react. The atmosphere grew tense, and many realized this was no simple skirmish. It was the start of a struggle for dominance. Zed clenched his jaw and muttered that Jin had given a fitting response to those who tried to suppress him. Meanwhile, the injured Kajin writhed in pain. The elder member of the Rankindel family noted that thanks to the twins' interference, the cadet's place in their faction was now secure. Shurin, Jin's younger brother, explained that Jin's actions weren't unpredictable, but rather a bold move tied to Rankindel's long-standing tradition of power contests. Jin stood before the crowd and ordered the recruits to listen. He told them they could challenge him or attack suddenly if they wished, but if he saw even the slightest sign of hostility, he would retaliate without hesitation. The recruits stiffened, sweat beading on their foreheads. Just then, a voice called out, identifying him as the 13th and youngest son, his eyes glowing red, and demanded to know if Jin truly believed he could act this way before him. Jin answered plainly that he did. When asked why, he calmly explained that he was certain his real fight wouldn't be against the twins, but against him. The crowd fell silent, shocked by his words, as Zed raised a hand, a magical flash sparking to life between his fingers. He repeated the question, asking if Jin truly intended to fight him, remarking that it sounded quite interesting. His tone hardened as he ordered Jin to explain himself, warning that depending on his answer, he could lose his head right there. Jin met the threat with narrowed eyes. Though his cheek was bruised and his breath measured, he stayed calm. Closing his eyes briefly, he remarked that the elder was resorting to intimidation inside a classroom, using his unique technique in front of the students. The air trembled as Zed attacked, the weight of his strike creating a sharp gust that rippled through the room. Jin stood his ground, silently enduring the impact. Chiron clenched his teeth and asked if Jin disliked how the students were being frightened and had caused this commotion because of it. Jin quietly confirmed that, aside from that point, everything else was as said. His honesty startled the watching cadets. Zed lowered his sword slightly and asked why he had chosen to wound another cadet instead of simply issuing a challenge. Jin explained that he had done it because he could not defeat Zed yet, and if he had believed he could win, he would have attacked him directly instead of Kajin or the twins. The Elder Knight's grip on his weapon tightened as he questioned whether Jin valued his life too little or was depending too much on his position as the Patriarch's son. Jin calmly denied both, saying that standing by just because his opponent was stronger wasn't how a Rankindel should act. Zed regarded him in silence for a moment before noting that while life might fade quickly, honor would last far longer. The elders' brothers exchanged confused glances. Then Zed broke into laughter, calling Jin's boldness foolish but impressive. Placing his hand on his side, he declared that his nephew had proved himself worthy of the Rankindel name and allowed him to continue. Chiron turned toward the cadets, telling them to remember this day. They had witnessed what it meant to belong to the Rank family. He added that Jin's actions showed the intensity that defined them, even if it bordered on madness. Clenching his fist, he reminded the students to keep fighting and never forget who they were. Zed dismissed them, saying their training would begin the next day. The boys agreed reluctantly, tension still heavy in the air. As Hayden voiced his frustration, Jin turned away and offered advice to his brothers, reminding them that they were more afraid of their older siblings now and asking whether that would remain true in the future. They lowered their heads, while a nearby mage quietly advised them to focus on what lay ahead rather than dwell on the moment. Later, when Jin returned home, the nanny greeted him in surprise at his early arrival. He set his sword down on the sofa and confirmed it. Calling for the maid, he explained that he had declared a battle for dominance against the twins. Jill froze in disbelief. He reasoned that Mu and Anna, their older sisters, were likely backing them, and the nanny asked if it was true he had challenged both at once. Jin answered yes. He went on to explain that he had injured a student belonging to his brother's group, only to discover that the same student was actually part of his sister's faction. He noted that his brother's inability to keep secrets had already tied him to their side, meaning that if their sisters found out, their anger would be inevitable. With a small grin, Jean added that his brothers could never accept a fifth-rank knight into their faction since they preferred recruiting those weaker than themselves. Jill lowered her gaze, pointing out that both of the sisters had already reached standard-bearer rank, and reminded him that standard-bearers could only fight others of the same level. She placed a tray of tea on the table as Jean agreed, saying he was glad his sisters had chosen to restrain him since it would be a heavy blow to their pride. As standard-bearers, they couldn't back down easily. Sitting down, he reasoned that the only way they could retaliate now would be to interfere with his team assignments and increase the difficulty of his missions, something that might even get him hurt or killed. Jill touched her cheek thoughtfully, and Jean noted that they would also make sure his solo missions were especially dangerous, which meant no one would accompany him. That, he added, gave him the freedom to fight at full strength. Jill smiled slightly, saying it was a good opportunity after all. Jean agreed, deciding he should thank his sisters and aim even higher. As the thought passed, he reached out suddenly and grabbed the cat in his hands. The young master quietly closed his eyes, saying he was certain no one would object to him taking his pet alone. The protagonist replied that he wouldn't bring Merkin on missions, planning to assign him another task instead. Turning curiously, Mirain asked what he'd be doing, but the protagonist simply told him he'd know later and that, for now, they should lie low. At that moment, Jill closed her eyes and called out to the young master. After completing 3 days of training, they would move out to a secret training ground reserved solely for Rankindel family members. Folding his arms, Zed explained that this was a privilege given only to pure bloods, though they shouldn't assume it would be easy. The brothers straightened their expressions as Zed continued, saying their family's swordsmanship was rooted in destructive power. It was about fighting, winning, wielding, and reflecting their nature in every strike. He noted that while there was no fixed definition to it, there existed secret techniques accessible only to standard bearers. Jean quietly observed that their sisters must be behind this sudden activity. Closing his eyes, the younger brother Chiron explained that Rankindel fencing had no fixed form, whether in foot position or stance, and that this was what set them apart from other families. Their uncle asked if they knew the reason, to which one cadet raised his hand and answered that it was because of their family's unique physical abilities and natural talent. Zed nodded in approval, and Zed stated that being born into their bloodline meant inheriting a strength beyond ordinary imagination. Even if they lacked refinement, he said, their level still surpassed that of others. Smiling faintly, the 8th-rank knight added that this natural advantage was why learning came so easily to them. Lifting a heavy object, Zed told them that each would now receive a steel ball. Jean's eyes widened as he examined it. Inside were strange metallic parts. Setting one on the table, Zed explained that it was a pure stone that emitted a ringing sound when struck. He then warned them to listen carefully, as they would hear 3 types of sounds. Raising his sword, Zed struck the steel ball. The sharp clang echoed, and the boys flinched, closing their eyes at the unpleasant vibration. Their uncle asked if they were dissatisfied, then swung again, sending out a deeper, stronger tone. Haytona grimaced loudly, and Zed commented that, as they could tell, the sound varied based on the strength of the strike. If too weak, the tone was dull and lifeless, but with the right balance of power, it became clear and beautiful. Lowering his hands, Jean realized that the true purpose of the exercise was precision. Every perfect sound represented focus, will, endurance, and control. The simplicity of the method suited their family's physical power perfectly. Still, as he looked around, Jean thought that hitting a piece of steel seemed too plain for Rankindel training. Zed's expression shifted as he warned them the last sound was next. Jean picked up the iron ball, puzzled. He heard a faint rattling within it. Zed swung his sword again, and in that instant, Jean understood there were steel fragments inside. His instinct screamed. Reaching out, he yelled for his brothers to get down. The steel ball cracked. A blinding flash, followed by a thunderous explosion, filled the room. White smoke covered everything. Lying on the ground, Jean exhaled heavily while Haytona, dazed, touched his head, unsure what had happened. Zed's voice broke the silence, asking if the youngest had a good reaction. Lowering his blade, he explained calmly that striking too hard would always end like this. The 8th-rank knight smiled faintly, saying they had learned the lesson and that training would begin now. He noted with pride that they were the first since Luna to escape unscathed. As they stood up, Chiron thoughtfully remarked that most of their siblings had been trained by Zed, so this intense start was just tradition. He added that he hadn't expected anyone else to survive it without injury. Jean raised a hand, asking how Luna had avoided being harmed. Zed closed his eyes, saying Jean might be disappointed to hear it, though at least it seemed to irritate his brothers. Jean accepted that calmly. With a faint magical shimmer surrounding him, Zed explained that Luna hadn't dodged at all. She took the explosion head-on and was so strong that she hadn't received even a scratch. Cover her face as firelight flickered across the room. Zed rested his sword against the floor, saying that, regardless, it was time to begin proper training. Pointing downward, he instructed them to keep striking until they could create a clean, resonant tone at any time and under any condition. All three nodded in acknowledgement. As daylight filtered through the high windows, a maid entered with a soft smile, greeting the young lady. Thanking her, the girl accepted the cup of tea the nanny placed before her. After a pause, the nanny recalled something the girl had said earlier, something about danger within the family, and quietly asked if she truly believed that someone in the Rankindel household wanted to kill. Settled into a chair and calmly mentioned that he suspected the young ladies Mia and Anna. Based on how closely they'd tried to monitor the protagonist, he believed they might be involved. Luna agreed that it seemed possible, but admitted she couldn't be sure if they were really reckless enough to attempt something so dangerous inside Bore Castle. She lowered her head, noting that it was forbidden to compete for inheritance against anyone residing within the castle walls. If their father ever discovered such an act, the entire family would be thrown into chaos and their lives would be in danger. The nanny turned slightly, asking whether there was a chance the young master had either lied or misunderstood the situation, and Luna explained that he'd only been 10 years old at the time, so both possibilities existed. Still, she added that the family had been investigating for 5 years without finding anything, which made it doubtful he had lied, and Luna recalled that he had been unusually cautious around her. The reflection in her cup showed her thoughtful face as she explained that it wasn't shyness, it was fear. He'd felt genuine danger in the air. The nanny wondered aloud if they should look deeper into Mia and Anna. Luna reached for her cup, saying she was more concerned by the lack of results after so many years. It felt unnerving, almost as if something was deliberately hidden. The maid admitted that she, too, was worried, fearing that the siblings might even harm Luna. Luna looked away and mentioned that she had already lived past her 30th birthday, implying that Nanny's concern might be unnecessary. Resting her chin on her hand, she quietly added that she only hoped her younger brother was doing well. The nanny asked if she was referring to Master Jed's training, and Luna confirmed it, explaining that he was experiencing the effects of her training methods aimed at strengthening the eyes and mind. She closed her eyes and murmured that the pure stone exercises were rough, but she was certain he was fonder. The next day, the scene shifted to the training grounds, where 4 hours had already passed. Jean frowned, realizing this session had gone on longer than any before. Exhaustion was setting in, and he found it unbearable. Zed finally announced a short break, allowing the cadets to catch their breath. Jean sat down and reflected that he had initially thought the training was meant to control strength and sharpen the mind, but now he understood it was about amplifying destructive power. He recalled how his uncle struck the pure stone so effortlessly and realized he still lacked the necessary physical force. Gripping his sword with both hands, he decided he needed to channel his aura more precisely, concentrating it until every strike produced the perfect tone. He reminded himself not to rush. If his brothers could do it in their past lives, so could he. Zed watched the group quietly. Hiona gritted his teeth, complaining about the break, while Zed noted that everyone was holding up better than expected. Daytona, closing his eyes, muttered that this didn't feel like a break at all. As a faint magical aura formed around Jean, Zed's eyes narrowed with interest. This child, he thought, might be capable of surpassing Luna's record. Later, as the session ended, Zed told Jean to inform his brothers that if they intended to act foolishly tomorrow, they shouldn't bother coming. Jean nodded and walked off, while Zed thought about how the twins had lasted longer than expected and still displayed the qualities of true runkas. But his thoughts lingered on Jean. He clenched his fists, silently questioning why someone like that had to be the youngest. With a frustrated sigh, Zed muttered that if Jean had been born 10 years earlier, all the power of the Rankendell family might have gathered in his hands. It was, he thought, a great loss. A month later, the cadets assembled in the central square for their next stage of training. An informant stood before them and announced that the middle class had been given their first official missions. Those whose names were called were to step forward. The first task was a security mission, guarding new recruits of the Blacksmith Association, while Houston and Waiting were appointed as the guards. The second task involved exterminating demonic beasts, specifically orcs, in the unprotected lands of the Kurano Principality. Reading from the list, the informant began calling out names, and several cadets, including Mesa and Bellup, reacted with alarm. He explained that around 24 orcs had been sighted and needed to be wiped out. Since these creatures usually moved in small groups, the cadets were told to prepare mentally and give it their best effort. With that, the man concluded his announcement, wishing them all good luck, while Daytona turned to his partner, muttering that the group consisted entirely of new recruits, poor souls who would likely return half-dead. Training continued without spectacle. The family's secret regimen moved from basics to the pure stone exercise. Zed also announced a separate, targeted assignment. Jin was tasked with eliminating Alcaro, a noted companion of the Ice Palace's master, Talaris, a notorious figure based in a tower in the Western Sea and known for ruthless protection of her favorites. The target's location in the criminal district of Mummet and the political sensitivity of the client made the mission unusual and dangerous. Retrieving Alcaro had failed repeatedly, and the family preferred his removal to risking a larger scandal. Jin accepted the task without hesitation. He understood the risk. The Ice Palace operated outside normal clan politics and was formidable on its own. He also recognized the upside. Completing such a commission would test his abilities under pressure and force him to rely on his training and judgment. Zed approved the acceptance, noting Jin's directness and composure, and the clan prepared to move out. The man folded his arms and stated that they would depart in 2 days. The twins, surprised, asked if their younger brother was really going to Mummet. Zed replied that Jean had said he was ready, so there was no reason to stop him. He reminded them that training was suspended during missions and told the twins to make sure their personal training wouldn't interfere with their duties. They nodded in agreement. Hatton called out to Jean, who turned away slightly and asked what he wanted. The boy raised his fist, telling him that if he ever found himself cornered, he should reveal his identity as a member of the Rankendell family, assuring him that no one would dare touch him. Jean found it unexpected that they were concerned for him. The twins quickly clarified that they were only saying this so he wouldn't die before they had a chance to defeat him themselves. Striking the steel ball, Jean told them to decide who they liked more before he came back. Their expressions tensed as he added that they should figure out whether they preferred their sisters or their younger brother. The 8th rank knight called out to the twins, and they both turned in unison. As Jean walked away, the uncle explained that the younger one was trying to tell them not to oppose him. Zed added that they should listen if they wanted to live a peaceful life. 2 days later, Mesa approached Jean and asked if he was heading to Mummet. He confirmed it. She noticed that his hair looked different, and he explained that it was part of his disguise since he couldn't appear there as a Rankendell. A sword rested in its sheath as he mentioned that his mission was different from theirs and that he needed a separate teleportation gate. He asked if they were on an extermination mission, which they confirmed. Noticing their somber expressions, Jean asked if something was wrong. Mesa said everything was fine and that they had only come to see him off. He found their worry unnecessary, reminding them this wasn't the last time they would see each other. Still, he acknowledged that if things didn't go well, someone might not return. He told them that worrying wouldn't change anything and urged them to stay focused on their own task. As a bright light surrounded him, Jean told them not to waste energy on needless concern and that they would meet again. Bellup asked him to be careful, and he assured them they would see each other soon. Gilly commented that they were adorable, while Jean placed his hand on his sword and asked her to keep an eye on them. The black cat closed its eyes, boasting about its fine appearance, and Jean reminded it not to get caught or noticed. Gritting her teeth, Miran called Jean intolerable and warned him not to be careless despite his disguise. He dismissed her and told the cat to leave. The maid noted that Miriam hadn't arrived yet, so things would stay quiet for a while. Jean, taking hold of his horse's reins, told her to treat it as a short break and promised to bring back a souvenir. Jill folded her hands anxiously, admitting her concern since Jean's mission involved killing the lover of the mistress of the Ice Palace. She said she knew he wasn't an ordinary cadet, but reminded him that Mummet was a dangerous place. The nanny urged him to take care, and Jean replied that he would, smiling faintly as he departed. At the gates of the criminal district of Mummet, the archway stood tall, marking a territory filled with the most dangerous outlaws. Inside a crowded room, a large man burst in, shouting for everyone to welcome the newcomer, only for others to yell that it was Tonk, caught again. The hideout roared with laughter and noise as men raised their mugs of alcohol, celebrating his return. The big man threw an arm around a smaller thug, pulling him close. Watching quietly, Jean thought to himself that the rumors were true. Nothing good ever grew in this place. The hooligans in the inn reacted to the newcomer with hostility and curiosity. Jean tossed a coin, requested water and a light snack, and the bartender accepted the payment. The crowd called for a show. One of the rougher men demanded submission and ordered the newcomer to kneel. The moment escalated until a small blade appeared at a throat, and a bead of blood fell onto the table. Silence followed. Danger was present and immediate. Jean remained composed. He recalled his mentor's guidance about Mummet. Strength and a steady demeanor commanded respect. He accepted the plate and declined the offer of drugs, making clear his purpose was to find someone. A red-haired woman named Easter noted arrivals. Jean confirmed none matched his search. He asked about lodging and was directed to the Moonwell, an inn in the western quarter known for relative safety even in this district. Under the moon, Jean assessed his target profile. Alcaro fit the description. A count's son accustomed to pleasures, reckless and conspicuous. The target's presence in a dangerous district suggested he intended to draw attention, likely to attract the mistress of the Ice Palace. Jean suspected illicit substances were being prepared in the room. He left the tavern to survey the inn's layout, removed his hood, and watched the hall. Alcaro's behavior matched expectations. Loud, entitled, and guarded by competent escorts who appeared to be roughly rank 6. That level of protection indicated a straightforward tactical approach. Avoid a noisy public confrontation. Avoid poisoning because of local norms, and aim for a quiet, controlled removal in a private chamber. Jean planned a stealthy infiltration to isolate the target and exit without signs of clan magic or exposing his identity. As he monitored patrol routes and guard rotations, a woman arrived with a protective retinue.